If you're looking for a podcast dedicated to real estate investing, personal finance, and how to navigate these uncertain financial times, you've came to the right place. Building credit, investing for your future, buying first home, starting a business, these are all goals that we want to achieve. Can it be intimidating at times? Oh, absolutely. The Perkins Group podcast is here to educate, help you understand, and craft your game plan for a fulfilling financial future. Without further ado, guys, let's get this thing rolling. Episode 2 is live from the North Shore of Spear Lake, Iowa, and I am your host, guys, Jeff Perkins. No matter the day, no matter the time, no matter the format in which you listen to this show, we very, very much appreciate you listeners for all that you do for us. Got a jam-packed episode 2 today, guys, to better understand, one, how did I actually lay the foundation for the Perkins Group, my business, and then hopefully if these insights give you a little bit of knowledge into what ideas you have for your business, maybe we can help lay the foundation for yours. Episode 2 is going to be dedicated to the start of my company, like I said, the Perkins Group. And the biggest thing was, right, I crafted this idea in my head. Ideas are phenomenal, but the big question is, can you do the execution to actually make this business come to reality? So when it comes to starting your own real estate business, a lot of these steps that I'm going to outline in this episode today will help you execute on that dream idea that you have in your head about starting a real estate business. Now, keep in mind, guys, not all of these steps that I'm going to apply and talk about in this episode today will necessarily apply to the business that you're starting. You may be starting a lawn care business. You may be detailing automobiles for customers. You may be doing something that doesn't require all the legality that goes in with owning properties and managing tenants that I have with the Perkins Group. But I figured the best way to actually tell the story about how I started my business and give you guys some insight is apply the experiences and lessons I had to help you craft that idea of what you need to do to execute on your new business idea. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into it. Step 1 of the 5-step plan that I used to start laying the foundation for the Perkins Group and get my business on its feet was this. Step 1 was actually forming my LLC, making my business in the state of Iowa an actual legal business. I grew up in a family of lots of entrepreneurs. My parents started their own business. My older brother runs a business, and both sets of my grandparents were also entrepreneurs in their own right over the last few years. So I figured when I was actually ready to launch this business, what better sets of insights would I possibly have other than right in my backyard with my family? The first thing I was going to do, like I said, was form my LLC to make this thing legal. A lot of people will say you can go to places like LegalZoom, you can form your LLC online in under 15 minutes and save yourself a lot of money. And originally when I first thought about starting this business, that was the direction I was planning on going. After talking to my parents a little bit more, trying to understand what my best path forward was, I actually got the guidance and the advice from my family that said, go through an actual lawyer to form your LLC. It may cost a little more money. It may take a little more time. But ultimately, when, push comes to shove, something happens, there's some legal action that's taken. It's nice to have a relationship already built in with someone that you know, because then in this scenario, using my rental properties, for example, what happens if someone slips and falls on one of my properties and they decide to sue the landlord or me in that situation? The nice thing with actually having my own physical lawyer was anytime I was going to get sued or any type of legal mail was going to be sent to me, they were actually set up as a filter. So in case something like that did happen, they were kind of there to receive that mail and then also make the best judgments for what my interests were with the business as well, too. So essentially, guys, what I'm saying here is highly, highly, highly recommend finding a personal lawyer, someone that you know, someone that you trust, someone that you can build a relationship with. So then when push does come to shove and maybe that nightmare scenario does happen with your business, you have a spot you can go to where they'll actually give you a game plan of how you can kind of work through those issues and then move forward. The cool thing was when I actually picked out this lawyer when I started this company in Des Moines, went into the lawyer's office. We sat down for about 20 to 30 minutes. We talked about 1, how is my business going to be structured? 2, which actually ties into the second part of my 5 steps is, how is my financials going to work with this business? What are my bank accounts going to look like? How am I going to pay for a lot of my debt on these properties? Things like that. And so that being said, guys, let's actually transition into step 2. Step 2 of the 5 steps that I used to form my business was the finances and the organizational structure of how all the money that's going in and out of my business, how that's going to look. After I met with this lawyer, got my LLC formed, and then actually received the employee identification number that goes when forming a business, this EIN is essentially used at the end of the year when you're filing your taxes, what profit was made, maybe what money you lost on the business. That's going to be tied like a social security number would be with, your personal expenses and income, for example, to actually give you a better idea and give the IRS a better idea of what money is being made or what money is being lost with the business. The biggest thing that's important to know as I was working through these finances is one, your personal expenses and your personal checking account that you use on a day-to-day basis, that needs to be separate from all the business expenses that you're doing. So the first thing I did was is I actually applied for a business checking account. I use a company called Novo.co, which is essentially a dedicated software, a dedicated platform for online checking accounts for a business. There's a lot of other ones you can use. That was just the preference that I took with forming that piece of it. But it was really important to know as I'm kind of tracking and managing my expenses, I want to use a very easy platform, something that I could use on my phone, something that would actually integrate into a lot of other bookkeeping apps like QuickBooks, for example, where it actually give me a really good basis of managing my income, managing my expenses to hopefully at the end of the year make my taxes a little bit easier and more efficient to finish up for the year. Another thing that I did that was really important, guys, is as you start your business, try to understand where a lot of your expenses are going to come from. The reason I bring that up is in my situation when I started the Perkins Group, the first property that I ever purchased, it required a lot of renovation, a lot of paint, a lot of flooring, a couple bathroom remodels, and then also a kitchen remodel. So the reason I bring that up is in my situation when I had to do all those things, I was actually buying a lot of my supplies and materials from Lowe's. Well, the really cool thing was as I bought everything from Lowe's, I actually signed up for a Lowe's for Pros credit card, which was pretty sweet because everything that I purchased, I actually got 5% off of all those supplies that I needed to do these renovations. One of the really cool examples and why I think this applies a lot and is really important as you start your business is I actually ended up doing one of these bathroom remodels. I was actually kind of doing both of them at the same time. And when I went into Lowe's one day, I bought brand new bathtubs, bathroom fixtures, flooring, all the stuff at one time that went into remodeling these bathrooms. So I ended up spending over $8,000 at Lowe's that one day. Well, as you can imagine with the 5% off, basically spending $8,000 there, I basically got a $400 credit back on my business for buying things that I needed to achieve the goals of my business anyways. And kind of like a cool little aspect of it at the end of it was with that $400 credit, guys, I ended up buying a lot of tools to basically help build my business, or like I would say, reinvest in the business to keep growing it too. So having that credit card, maybe having something that, of course, you want to pay this credit card off in full all the time. That's just a basic personal finance tip. But if you're going to be buying a lot of stuff from one specific place, having something that you're going to get those rewards off of a credit card, and it may not even be a Lowe's, for example, wherever you're going to buy that stuff from, make a good list, make a good idea of what rewards programs are available to you as you buy these things, because really in the end of it, you're going to get a lot of benefits on the back end as well too. But regardless, guys, enough about credit cards. Let's go into step 3 of 5 of how I form my business. And in my opinion, this third step is probably the most important for anybody, regardless of what that entrepreneurial venture is going to be anyways. And that's essentially forming the team that's going to help support you throughout this journey. In my situation, forming a team was absolutely critical for what I needed to do. Because when it comes to managing rental properties, renovations, all those sorts of things that go into the Perkins Group, I need a really good group of experts around me to help navigate through all these challenges. With what I'm doing with rental properties, I need to have a property manager that, once I get tenants into these properties, they're going to collect rent, they're going to get people signed to leases and do a lot of the day-to-day management that goes into these properties. The really cool thing that actually worked out with having a property management company was about a year before I started the Perkins Group, I was crafting up this idea, but then also trying to determine what other people out there in the Des Moines Metro maybe had a little experience the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years on running a rental property business. So the really cool thing was when I found Renters Warehouse, which is my property management company, I actually was able to go into the offices of this company, talk to the owner of the firm who managed and owned quite numerous amounts of rental properties on the side in his own right, to determine what challenges had he ran into in the years. Was he actually going to give me very honest feedback, which he did, on what my game plan was and if that was actually going to be something that was going to make a lot of sense and then also benefit me for years to come. So the big thing I talk about on this podcast, and you guys are already understanding the theme, right, is it's all about building relationships with all sorts of people. In my situation, building a very positive relationship that still stands to this day with my property management company. They actually provided me quite a bit of mentorship and then also guidance on what do you guys need to look for when you buy your properties? What are things that will go into the management of these? How do you deal with maintenance issues when those issues do come about in the future? And then it really just gave me a little more peace of mind that I was actually doing the right thing by starting this company. Other than property management companies though too, what other people encompass the team that I need to be successful on a day-to-day? With real estate, guys, right, it's going to run into a lot of things such as financing with the properties, working with banks to understand what interest rates, what lending structure is going to work out the best for you. So having a really good friend of mine for quite a few years that's actually my mortgage banker has been absolutely beneficial, bar none, to what I need to do for running this company. And then also a lot of the other real estate professionals that go into this as well too. I have a really good realtor that I work with. They actually understand what my goals are with buying properties. So as they spec out properties, they actually filter through something that's actually worthwhile for me to go spend my time to see rather than something that isn't even worth my time going to look at. Lots of other professionals that go into this situation, right? You got to have a really good accountant that's going to determine a lot of your finances and help you ensure that you're successful come tax time. And then lots of other things, right? If I run into a situation with a renovation project that's maybe a little bit out of my skill set, having a group of trusted and known contractors to do a lot of these projects is something that has been absolutely critical to me, guys. So in summary, having a team put together that's going to ensure success from the many different fronts and ensuring challenges when running a company, step 3 of 5, in my opinion, is by far the most important to ensure you are successful. Okay, step 4 of 5. Step 4 may not apply to every single one of you that are starting a different venture, regardless or different from real estate investing, but this one definitely applied to me. And that's emergency reserves and emergency cash for my properties. I've ran into issues with maintenance stuff before. Sewer line had broke, repairs of a roof, all sorts of things, tenant damage, stuff like that has to keep you prepared. Vacancy, empty properties. Of course, you don't have a tenant in your property. It's not going to pay the mortgage for you. So step 4 or 5 for me has been the emergency cash and safety reserves needed to keep the business afloat, but then also help me sleep a little bit better at night. I actually end up doing a podcast here, one of the next few episodes, where I'm going to talk about how I spec out a rental property to actually determine and run the numbers to see if it does make sense at quick first glance versus not making sense. One of the biggest things I look at for a reserves and maintenance type situation is I balance in and I budget in 1% maintenance per year off of the purchase price. You're going to have things like carpet needs to be replaced. There's going to be holes in walls, all of the normal wear and tear that goes with owning rental property. But then the other part of it that I manage with my books is, like I said, that sleep well at night business checking account to make sure that in case a nightmare situation or emergency happens, I am covered on the back end. So what I ended up doing when I started the business is I actually started property 1. I put $10,000 aside in cash for those emergencies to make sure that I'm covered. As I gathered each individual property after that first one, I added and are insured that an additional $5,000 was in that checking account as well too. Gives me a little bit of peace of mind. Allows me, if there's a vacancy with one of the 3 properties, whatever it may be, you'll have the income coming for the other 2, but then with those reserves, you do have a little bit of fluff built in there to pay the mortgages, to pay for those maintenance, to make sure things are taken care of, and then that you're not going to run behind on some of those payments that would go into it. And then last but not least, the 5th step of my 5-step plan to lay the groundwork for my venture to give me a really good footing to kind of move forward was something that I call quitclaim deeds. Essentially, what a quitclaim deed is it transfers ownership of a property from one entity to another. So in my situation, when I bought these properties, right, basically my mortgage banker, they were looking for a certain amount of income per year. And of course, with this being a new business, I wasn't able to get funding from the business side of things because I hadn't actually shown 2 years of positive growth, positive revenue, positive income, those sorts of things. So what I ended up doing was I bought the properties in my personal name because I had, normal W-2 wages at that time, had a history of income, good credit, those sorts of things. And by filing that quitclaim deed, I actually transferred the ownership of the properties from my personal name over to the Perkins Group LLC. Now you may ask yourself, why did I do this? The biggest reason why I did this kind of goes back to a lot of the legal stuff I talked about with step one with forming my LLC and using my lawyer. Basically, what that allowed was in that nightmare situation, like I talked about, it's an icy day, a tenant maybe they don't scoop the driveway, they end up slipping and falling and breaking their arm or ankle or something like that, and then they decide to sue me. Well, in the absolute worst case scenario, say I get sued, I get taken for everything in court, and then the business goes bankrupt. Well, the nice thing is if that situation was to happen, there at least would be a separation of my personal assets versus my business assets. And like I said, in that situation, the business fails. At least my personal vehicle, personal belongings, personal house, all sorts of those things, those would be under a different entity where those would not get taken away from me in those bankruptcy proceedings. So that being said, guys, episode 2 is in the books. Feeling really good about this podcast. Got a lot of really good episodes coming up the next few months. If you have any suggestions, comments, or any other types of things that you would like to see out of this podcast, we are open to any and all feedback. As always, you can reach us at the normal platforms on Instagram at the Perkins Group LLC. You can check us out on Facebook. And then, of course, last but not least, you can check us out on the website, www.perkinsgroup.llc. Thank you guys. Appreciate your support. And however and whenever you listen to this show, whatever platform it may be, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, we are on all the major platforms where you get your podcasts. Please rate us 5 stars, subscribe to the show, and as always, tell all of your friends and family about this show. Thank you guys, and we'll talk to you next week. Hey guys, if you're still listening up to this point, you guessed it. That's the end of the episode. If you have any questions, comments, future podcast recommendations, or even just want to leave a message, please check us out on Instagram at the Perkins Group LLC or on our website, www.perkinsgroup.llc. As always, we appreciate your support and please subscribe to the show on whichever platform you get your podcasts from.